Jools Holland is an English pianist, singer, songwriter, TV presenter and band leader. And there aren't many people that you could really classify as a band leader these days, I don't think. He first came to public prominence in the band Squeeze in the late 70s. He briefly had a band called The Millionaires. He was co-presenter of a TV music show called The Tube, which was based in Newcastle, near where I lived, but he was fired for that for swearing on live TV. He then later did a TV show called Later with Jools Holland, which was hugely well regarded as being a place for new, excellent music to be showcased. And he does an annual Hootenanny on New Year's Eve, which is based on the Later format. He has released several, solo isn't really the right word, but several albums under his own name or combinations with bands. I reckon about 35, with the first in 1981. He formed a band called the Rhythm and Blues Orchestra, which is currently, I believe, 17 people in all. And they play big band jazz, boogie-woogie, blues, ska, and similar stuff. This, in terms of albums, started, I believe, with 1996's Sex and Jazz and Rock and Roll, and has continued since. He's worked with a lot of people. A lot of his albums are either, he went through a phase of having basically most of them being collaborations with various well-known singers, some of them musicians, and then more recently he's done whole album collaborations with various people. He also tours in the UK most years. Hi, my name's Dan. Good to see you, except of course I can't see you, but you can see me. And this is a review of Hop the Wag by Jools Holland and his Rhythm and Blues Orchestra. Most of this channel is dedicated to a series of reviews that I've undertaken of the 3,000 greatest albums of all time. Wow, that's quite a mountain that I'm tackling, according to a list at a site called Acclaim Music. But I do occasionally off-beat reviews, and this is one of those. And this is in the category that I call Dan's Picks. Which basically I've got one category which is things that I think are really well known and should have been on the list, and I call them criminally missing. I've got another category which is things that I think very few people will know and I really like, which is called hidden gems. And this one's the kind of in-between category, which is things that I really like but maybe aren't that well known. So yeah, this is what I'm doing. So this is Jools Holland's, I think, 13th album, and I think 5th in his era of doing stuff with his big band. So my history with Jools Holland is that I went to see him live 20-odd years ago for the first time. And I went because I knew he had a special guest, who was the English singer Sam Brown, a female singer who I absolutely loved and still do. And I was not at all disappointed by Sam singing, but discovered at the same time that Jools Holland's band is fabulous and fantastic. So I've been to see him, I don't know how many times in total, but I think it must be about 10 over the years, over those intervening 20 years. And I have to say, as I wanted to do a Jools Holland album as one of my dance picks, and I found it really hard to choose which one to feature, because first of all, there's a bit of kind of homogenous feel around this time. A lot of the albums kind of, in my head, blur into one, because they're kind of similar style in some ways, but they all also have their own good features, their own stellar tracks that, I really love, along with the background of the great stuff that I enjoy. I would say maybe this one is more varied than some of the other albums. Let's try and do some description. So it's big band, and then you feel like the word jazz needs to go on the end of there, but it's not necessarily what you might think of as jazz all the time. Some of it is quite jazzy, but it's kind of more rooted in boogie-woogie piano. There's quite a bit of blues at times. There's some really good piano playing in here. There's brass arrangements, but then they break off and do solos for individual people very much in the jazz tradition. But it's just kind of this kind of mass of stuff that is, and I'm not sure if the word appropriated is right, that is adapted and kind of brings stuff in. So on this album, there's a couple of ska tracks, for example, still with his big band, but the feel is there's one track on here called Lautet that I have no idea what you could call it. There's a track on here which is played by a pianola, which is an automatic piano. There's even some kind of funk feel. There's some synth sounds in here, and it's is quite varied, but it's all got this kind of big band joyfulness to it, and it's kind of rooted back in earlier years, kind of 40s, 30s, 50s, maybe. But then he picks songs from all over to do. So on this album, I think most of the tracks are self-penned. There are a few that are recognisable ones that I know from elsewhere. Quite a few of the songs that are songs are sung by Jools, but there are some guests here. There is Sam Brown, who I mentioned before, and she's particularly featured on the track The Way You Look Tonight, which is the song that you might know. There's I'm in the Mood for Love, which features Jamiroquai. There's also some instrumentals here, including the first track on the album is called Honey Dripper, which for quite a lot of the concerts that I've been to, this is the opening tune that they start with and kick off the evening with. Why do I like it? Well, it's got a great feel. It never feels clinical, despite the fact that there's obviously written parts here. He's a great piano player. The whole feel is good. When you see them live, it's obvious they absolutely love him being on stage and playing together, and that comes through in the recordings as well. Maybe not quite so much when you can't see their faces, but it's good. A few albums ago in my normal list, I did a Count Basie album, and that reminded me of Jools Holland quite a lot. And so I've stepped out, and I'm doing one of my dance picks to do this. So I love this album, but I love Jools Holland, and almost everything he's done I'm a great fan of. And I'd love to know, as always, what you think. So if you haven't come across it before, please do have a listen, and then let me know. And if you haven't come across it before, please do let me know what you think. That's it from me for now.